Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, councillors. Welcome to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for the 9th of July 2024. Please be advised, everybody, that this is a public meeting and is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. Do we have any declarations of interest? No? Okay with that. Apologies for absence and substitutes, and then we have a few.
Yes, Chairman, we have apologies from Councillor. We have apologies from Councillor Newstead, Councillor Tipple, Councillor Ward and Councillor Bullman, and the substitutes are Councillor Hemstall, Councillor Catchpole and Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. Welcome substitutes if you haven't been here before, and the subs have always made a really useful contribution to these meetings, so I'm sure that'll continue tonight. Minutes of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting held on the 14th of May 2024. Have they been scrutinised, looked through, and everyone happy with them? I see a lot of nodding. Wonderful. Okay, we'll take them as being correct. Chairman's announcements. I have nothing specific to say other than it seems like a very long while, which of course it has. It's the 14th of May since we last met. What a lucky time we were to have all that time away from politics. But perhaps as much as to say, we will perhaps just at that point just to actually might just bring in now because we spoke about the training which is available at the end of this month. So I might just pass over to Sinead just to let her speak, because if not I will misspeak and say the wrong date or the wrong time.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So you have in your diary training for the 30th of July at 6 p.m. If I could just ask whether you can accept or decline, just so we know numbers. For those who are unable to attend, we'll either do a follow-up session with you individually, or depending if quite a few can't attend, we'll do a second training session. Thank you.
Thank you, Sinead. Item 5, public speaking.
There's no public speaking, Chairman.
Wonderful. We're going to get through this, Mark, probably in time for the football. Let's go to the Cabinet report. Strategic performance and risk report for quarter 4 2023-2024 with Helen. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Chair. The report is presenting the end-of-year performance for 23-24, and overall the picture was a very good performance, being of 70% of measures were green at the end of the year. I will highlight some of the key points shown within the report. Firstly, the measures that ended the year on a red status, and they were customer satisfaction and consolidated demand on housing. Customer satisfaction was red due to a delay with our supplier on the phone lines, so we were unable to launch the customer satisfaction survey on the phone lines. However, this has been progressed and is tested in quarter 4 and is fully ready to launch in quarter 1. So the figure that you see on customer satisfaction was purely for the website collection of data only. So the quarter 4 really had incomplete data, which rendered the performance red against the red, amber, green status. Secondly, the consolidated demand on housing. This has been red throughout the year because we've seen far higher demand than anticipated due to the impact on the economy, implementation of new government legislation and the end of private rental properties that continues to filter through. So therefore, action to be taken for going forward is that they're about to complete the temporary accommodation programme by purchasing 86 units to support the current demand, and that will ensure we have the right property at the right time for residents that need it. And then phase 2 will be looking at longer term demand predictions to understand what properties will be needed for the future. Then moving on to the amber measures with a downward direction of travel. There are two, the collection of council tax and business rates. The drop in collection was expected due to the implementation of the Civica Revenues Benefits System in December. This resulted in 4 weeks of downtime, and therefore the court recovery work had to be suspended, etc. But since then, the new system's gone live, and we are working extra hours to catch up with work and commencing recovery work. There were economic development measures also that were amber with a downward trajectory, This is the number of new jobs created in the district and the employment rate. Those measures are being monitored to see if it's a continuing annual trend. It could be employment numbers are an indicator of economic decline and demographic change, but we will keep watching brief on that one. And the other one, lastly, was those in employment claiming universal credit. The numbers this year have increased, but this may well be because more residents are now moving over to universal credit from other benefits rather than an increase in lower paid jobs. So again, we will keep a watching brief on that one. Amber measures that just require a light touch monitoring. The staff retention is one of those. All the year it's been a red measure, it's moved to amber, so we are progressing in the right direction, and staff retention is better than it has been throughout the year. Food businesses with a rating of 4 and 5, it did miss the target slightly, but it is on an upward direction of travel. There are more and more food businesses every year, therefore more and more inspections. So again, we'll just keep a light touch monitoring on that one. And the last one on there, fly tips removed within 1 working day. The target is 100%, so we missed the target, but again, we have better performance than the previous quarter. So again, moving in the right direction. There are 22 measures with good performance, and just to highlight a couple of those, for example, residents accessing support via the Help Hub. This quarter and overall this year, we've exceeded our target. We've seen ongoing increasing numbers accessing social prescribing and the Help Hub. It is driven by a range of factors: cost of living, increased awareness of support via the media, and several individual projects which target support. We will be reviewing the demand that's coming into the Help Hub to fully understand the demand profile. That will enable us to put proactive interventions into place to help support people earlier and before issues escalate. And then lastly, participation levels in garden waste service. The levels have increased with people coming on board with the garden waste service, even with the cost of living pressures and the economic climate. So again, all good measures going in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Do we have any questions from the members? Sue.
Thank you, Chair. It's been a while since I've been in ONS, so I've just got a couple of general questions. First of all, well, I'll save them till the end. So, on the performance report, I note that the risk of a cyber attack was in the red and considered to be severe and highly likely. So I just wondered what steps we were taking to alleviate that risk. I had another question on the savings of collaboration. I wondered what was the one officer team transitional costs. If somebody could just explain what that is, please. And on page 5 of the appendix, the HR survey response, which said, I have not experienced bullying, harassment or discrimination in the past 12 months, was high, but it didn't say whether it was 100% of staff that have not had that experience, and I wondered what the actual percentage was and whether we have a target specifically for that. Thank you.
First of all, if I address the risk report, the risks have not changed from quarter 3 to quarter 4 and remain static. I'll just go to the national cyber security. The planned actions we have in place, we have actually completed ensuring the effectiveness of the controls we have in place with a third-party review. We have got, we're raising awareness within the business of the risk of a cyber attack and the importance of adhering to the security policy. That is throughout the staff as a whole. We are ensuring that all ICT staff are adequately trained and skilled to apply security control and manage security events. So that's upskilling and multi-skilling within the actual ICT team. And we are, will be ensuring members are aware of cybersecurity risks through a completion of a Skillsgate module, which is an internal platform for training, which will be rolled out by the internal ICT team.
And if I could just add on that one, I think it's absolutely appropriate that that cyber risk is given that high priority. Given the national media cover, we know that actually there are organisations in the public sector that have been targeted by cyber risks, and actually I think it'd be remiss of us not to have it there. So actually we're doing everything we can to mitigate that risk, but it is a challenging climate out there. There are people who will target organisations, and actually we're doing everything we can, but that risk is very high for public sector organisations in the current climate. Did you want me to take the transitional cost ones? So the one team transitional costs, so these were costs back at the start of the bringing together the one team. So I think they're back in 1920 when they were incurred, so quite a while ago. So these were general, I think, some consultancy costs and general work to bring the two teams together. I think in total they're only about £69,000. I haven't got that full detail in front of me, but actually they were quite small costs at the start of just bringing the two teams together.
And with regard to the staff satisfaction survey, I don't have the figures to hand today, but we can obviously have a look at those and forward you the answers to your question. Thank you.
Peter.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. With regards to the measure reference 29 and the participation levels in the garden waste service, as you're no doubt aware, there were big issues with the failure of the direct debit scheme, and I wondered whether we can be given some assurances that's fully addressed so that we don't see this satisfactory green status falling away next year, because there have been, and I can speak personally, there have been problems with the direct debit scheme. Thank you.
Yes, I concur. There were the problems. It was an error at our end in that when we went to collect the garden waste direct debits, we hadn't fully notified the banks of some of the details, so the banks rejected them. So actually we were trying to collect the right amount, but I didn't have quite the right reference. So in accordance with the direct debit guarantee scheme, it will not get collected. So what we did, we obviously communicated with all our customers, and actually we then resubmitted and got that payment a month later. So we actually gave them sufficient notice, so it didn't affect anyone's collection. All it meant was, rather than actually collecting your garden waste when we intended to in April, it was delayed till the May. But we have now gone through that process and actually recollected it, and therefore we are now confident that the reference we had are actually correct, and therefore they have been collected correctly. So it is our error, and actually it's one of the things that occasionally we do make errors like that.
Before I go to Caroline, then Martin, then Fran, can I just ask, because there's a couple of things, obviously there's a mistake on that direct debit. I wonder, of a couple of the points within this seem to be about migrating systems and changing things, which is, to what extent is that another problem that's been caused by a system migrating to another platform or being outsourced or whatever to something different, you know, in the same way as those other two measures that have gone red? Or is that something in-house which was just simply not conspiracy, but, you know, cock up? As they say, bad things happen two ways, don't they? It's either conspiracy or cock up. They're saying quite often just simply the mistake.
It was related to the change in the system, but it wasn't something that we couldn't have sorted out. Actually, it was just an error in that we've notified the banks of some of the changes to direct debit, but we hadn't gone through the process, because what we did was try to standardise the customer reference numbers so they're aligned between our new system for actually recording the garden waste bins and what was held on the finance system. So it was just a change of reference number, but we hadn't identified and told the banks that. So it was related to the system, but it wasn't a direct correlation with, because of the system change, it still shouldn't have happened.
So then it should happen again because we've made a mistake now. It's not something which is going to occur, we learn from the mistake.
Yes, yeah.
The staff absence due to mental health issues seems to be quite high, and it seems to be rising. What are we doing as a council to give more support to the staff?
I'm not necessarily the exact person to do this. I'm sure Emma could give us more, but actually it is something we do try and support staff. We do have mental health first aiders. We do actually have a very good suite of policies to support staff, and we do try to be a good employer. So actually, if people come to us with employers with issues, we can actually refer them to occupational health, and actually if they need some sort of a counselling or support, again, we try to make sure we give them access to that support. I think it's a reflection of the national picture. There's a lot more incidents that we're aware of mental health issues, and actually it's becoming more common that people feel actually confident to be able to report these things and taking action against it. So in some ways it's a bad sign that you're seeing more, but it's also positive that actually people are feeling more confident to be able to say, I'm struggling with the mental health issues and we're bound to address it. So I think it's something that we're conscious of, and hopefully we'll keep being a good employer to actually help staff through this. Because actually, was it something like 1 in 4 people in their lifetimes will have challenges with mental health? 1 in 3, is it? So actually, it's something that we need to make sure actually a lot of our staff will be going through these issues, and we want to make sure we support them to make sure they're actually having good lives and also productive workforce.
Martin.
Thank you. I have several, so I don't know if you want to just take them one at a time or I'll just go all in. So the first one was the Measure 7 and Measure 8, where we've got the percentages of collection. I have raised this previously, where it's great having percentages, but there isn't a value associated with how much is 1% worth in terms of everything. How much is that? Because I presume that then is against all authorities. And especially with these two, I know we did a piece of work last year where we appointed the new debt collection because they were supposed to be better, and yet we are lower collection rates. The next one is 9, 10, and then obviously 11 linking in with that. So, you know, all of these measures have gone down quite significantly, and bearing in mind the population increasing, and yet we have got less people in employment, and the trend is still downwards. And then you've got the universal credit applications. Now I know there were changes in the number of some of the calculations, but again, it's just a worrying trend on all three of those. What are we doing to address those areas? And then the other one was on item 20. In the action taken, there's the programme of purchasing 86 units, and I did have a word with Mike beforehand, but it's really just confirmation again that is for both authorities and not just for Broadlands.
86 units. If I take the one on collection rates, because that's my area, so very much for council tax, we collect about £100 million in council tax for the authority for the year. Obviously, this is for Norfolk County Council, the police, and ourselves. So 1% is obviously about £1 million. So it is a sizable amount of money. For business rates, we collect about £30 million. So again, that puts that into context. I can report that actually we are now back up to date with our sort of collection cycle. So the issue is, once the system is down, you can't really start taking people to court for non-payment, because there could be something sitting in the queue where they've notified us of a change of circumstances, and therefore it'd be inappropriate for us to take them to court to say, actually, you owe us some money, when they told us a month ago that they'd moved out. So that's why it put all our collection cycles back. But now we are up to date, so actually people have got a lot more reminders and summonses to court, which is very much starting again. So we should see an increase in that collection this year, particularly of the previous year's debt. With regard to the use of the enforcement agents, again, we've gone with ARP, and the performance they've been delivering has actually been very good for ourselves. but they only get involved once we've very much gone to that summons cost. Once we've got that summons order from the courts, we then will pass it to the ARP to help us collect that summons after that stage. So again, that was slightly delayed on when some of the debt would have gone to them. Your next question was about some of the economic indicators. These are quite challenging indicators in that these are the ones collected for our areas. There's ones that we can influence, but we can't necessarily directly control some of these. So some of this does reflect the national circumstances as opposed to what we can individually control. But that's why we have the economic growth team, and they actually support economic growth to try and develop businesses, business builders grants, and its support to businesses, and actually trying to make sure we're a pro-business community. So actually, if they want to register and start a new business, they can contact our environment and health team and get advice on sort of food safety and things like that. So we try and be pro-business and encourage growth, but there is certainly a limit to what we can do. We can't necessarily counteract all the national factors affecting that. And your third question was, I think, for Mike, hopefully, which Mike might hopefully address.
Councillor Morrell's making me keep me fit. Specifically about the point about temporary accommodation, yes, there is across Broadland and South Norfolk, so apologies, I should have clarified that was 43 for Broadland. There is more properties coming online as we have LAF funding as well, so but that will be updated in due course in future ones. And just to point out in terms of the universal credit point, because people now are migrating over to universal credit, then they may well be gaining universal credit but still being in employment. So actually that measure isn't particularly effective to demonstrate how many people are actually in employment. So that's more of an indication about the level of employment in terms of wages that they're on. And so we need to revamp that, we need to rethink that, because people migrating over just doesn't necessarily mean that they're coming out of work or they're in low paid jobs. So the measure perhaps doesn't sit right at that measure level. So we want to revamp that one.
Thank you. So the housing is coming forward, and that you were saying that that's from the next round. That's the level 3 LAF funding.
Yeah. So we've had so we just implemented level 2, and then we'll see level 3 when that comes out, and see what round 3. Sorry, not level 3. Round 3 of LAF, and obviously, but we're bringing more properties on board as we've purchasing properties for LAF 2. Then they'll come on stream. So we'll see an increase in that, but that specific figure there is 43 was the original number that was designated to 43 units for Broadland Council.
And the likelihood of us receiving that funding coming through?
Well, a new government, so we'll see. Obviously, I mean, we're fairly positive that will come through, but we're just waiting literally to hear. Whether that funding will come through, we're expecting it, but we'll see. But I'll keep you informed as we do.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to ask a couple of questions, really. I don't want to conflate two issues, really, but potentially. I mean, we're talking about customer satisfaction. That obviously wasn't helped by the problems with the collection of the bins, the garden bins there. So obviously that one would have affected the other, I would expect. But the main question I want to ask is, obviously this rollout didn't go very well. What have we learned, and what will we do differently in the future to ensure, because we're going to have other rollouts, it's a constant thing with IT. So I mean, clearly there was no testing done, no testing at all. Otherwise this wouldn't have happened. So what is going to be done in the future to ensure that we don't get similar sort of outcomes? Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
As a general point, when we do a project, we always, at the end of the project, will do a lessons learned document to review it as part of our governance. Because actually, all projects, there will be issues, and we'll try to learn from them, sort of thing. And actually, I can assure you that all systems we do put in, there is extensive testing done in place. and indeed this is a direct debit one, we actually found that actually it wasn't all the direct debits that failed, it was only a proportion of them. So actually, even if it would have been very difficult to do something like that and actually test everything, because actually you only know for certain when you go live. All the testing in the world is great, but it is when you switch that final switch on and go live, there sometimes is something that you go, actually we didn't cotton onto that, and actually it literally was we didn't notify the bank through the back system of some of the direct debit new numbers. We had for some, but not for others, and actually if you'd have moved in and had a new direct debit, we would have notified the bank it was the existing ones that we thought were going to work that failed, because we hadn't then said, oh, there's a new number, we need to notify the new number. But I can assure you that actually we've learnt a lot. And you look at what we've done as a council over the past sort of 5 years, we have put in the new systems for most areas. We've had the HR system, the finance system, the planning system. We have put a lot of change in all the work we've done on the IT infrastructure. Most of that has gone really smoothly, and actually there have been some hiccups, and we are open and honest to say it hasn't been perfect, but in general I think the rollout of the IT systems has been a success over the past 5 years and helped deliver significant savings, because we have in most cases gone from one system for Broadland and one system for South Norfolk, and now have a joint system for both, which has delivered the savings in line with our one team idea of delivering savings and working together. But I can't sit here and say it's been absolutely smooth. There have been challenges, but we now are on a single system, I think, for absolutely everything. I can't think of anything that's left to move on to a single system. So actually we've gone through a very big journey over the past 2 years.
Thank you, Chairman. It just feels that you're saying that the things that went wrong, you know what they are, and it was tested. It clearly wasn't tested, because it was significant. It wasn't a tiny amount. It wasn't a small number of people. It was a significant number of people. And if you're saying that the people who there were problems with, there was something about the number that was sent to the bank. Well, if that had been tested, then that wouldn't have happened, would it? You're saying you'd have known that the people, you're talking about the existing people who we asked for money for. So you only had to test one or two of the existing ones, and it would have bounced back, and you'd have said, oh, hang on, there's a problem there. So I'm just saying that it doesn't feel as if the testing was done properly. You know, I mean, I know you're saying it was, but it doesn't feel like it was. Thank you.
No, I think I agree. I'd say with hindsight, we should have checked that aspect as well, and it obviously wasn't, because actually, and if we were doing it again, we would learn from that and check that off, because actually you do, whenever you go through a lessons learned, you go, actually, what should I have done differently, and with hindsight, we would have done differently, sort of thing. It is unfortunate that when we do the direct debits, we just do a big bang approach. In order to make sure we collect the money on time, we're basically sending 29,000 direct debits in one day. And actually, that might be something we want to learn in the future, and go, actually, let's do a smaller batch a day before, and then do that. So actually, I think that you're right, there are things we should learn and go forward in.
Right, I'll bring in Emma before we probably then go to the recommendations. Oh, and then go on Lana. I'll put Emma first, then Lana, then we'll go to the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I've got a couple of points, but I'm hoping you'll be able to bear with me and pick them out. So the first one is that there are a couple of on-target measures that are green, going downwards and extremely close to the target. And I just wonder what monitoring is being done of those, so that we don't suddenly get the shock that they're amber or red in the next quarter. One specifically being staff absence, which we've touched on, a little bit of mental health. Then I wonder if any work has been done when we look at mental health and we look at the big jump in quarter four, and we also look at the customer satisfaction. We've maybe done lessons learned on the system. Have we looked at lesson learned? Is there any correlation between conspiracy, cock up, customer experience, because it wasn't just the bins, it was council tax as well, and the staff who've had to handle the fallout of that. Is there any correlation there that's affecting their wellbeing and mental health? And then the third point is that I know that we've referenced in the appendix that, you know, CIPD talk about the management culture can have a significant impact on people's mental health. Pilot was rolled out in May. I'm just wondering if it's possible to get an update in a future meeting of how that's going, what that looks like, and how closely that's being monitored against staff absence. Thank you. Sorry, I do realise you might not be best placed to answer those, but I just thought.
Yes, I'm just referring to the report. Obviously, Emma's not here to actually directly answer those questions. The staff absence one is close to the target. It's generally fairly close to target every year. We have a lot of procedures in place to obviously help staff, as Rodney said before, with all the referrals that we're able to do. It is something that the HR team are constantly monitoring and keeping an eye on with the managers as well. So again, the staff absence measure is monitored very closely. And anything flagged if we're going to go towards amber or red.
But yeah, that's great. And I think having read all the things that we put in place, they look really robust. But actually, that's only catching up after it's happened. So I'm quite interested to see what perhaps as a council we're doing or able to do that means that perhaps we will get into that point, because that's will catch people before actually they're in a bad way. So and I'm hoping that maybe some of what's referenced in pilot might come back and shed some light on that. Thank you.
Yes, we can get Emma to have a look at that and come back to you on those points. Regarding against the correlation maybe between the customer satisfactions and maybe the staff dealing with some of the issues of mental health. Again, I'm not sure of any correlation that is there. Again, Emma could have a look at that with HR to see if there is any correlation there that stands and what the issues are regarding mental health, because I haven't got a breakdown with me today. But yes, we will have a look at that for you. And with regards to your last point, that is not something I have knowledge of, the CIPD mental health rollout.
No, not aware.
No, so again, we'll have to come back to you on that point as well. Apologies.
Lana.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's nice to be back at Overgreen Scrutiny. It's been a while. I have two questions. One is to do with, again, it's the rollout of the new system, the fact that we were unable to do the collections as we were supposed to, and the brown bin collection, the direct debit fell. Did that result, because it seems that there was, that sounds and looks like a big financial car crash, did that have any cash flow implications for us as a council over that period of time, sort of December, January, February? So that's my first question. And the second one is around the universal credit and housing and employment. See, what I'm seeing behind that, Chairman, is that I'm grateful for the clarification that the universal credit claimants aren't all necessarily completely out of work. But what that indicates to me is that the major employers around here that have potentially suffered are SMEs. And so, you know, that sort of mini crisis in employment and how people are paid, it tends to indicate that there is a bit of a drama going on in the small and medium enterprise sector in Broadland. So I'm wondering, you know, what is Cabinet planning to do in terms of boosting economic development, making sure that, you know, small businesses are signposted in the right way. I know that we've had issues with the LEP being dissolved, etc., etc. So there's been a lot of sort of instability and lots of questions mark about, you know, how is economic development going in Norfolk these days. So I just wondered if Cabinet has any plans, intentions to make sure that they put their arms around the small and medium enterprise sector to ensure that A, they are signposted to the right sort of funding, and B, that there is potential for upskilling people from those clearly significantly low paid jobs into, you know, more gainful employment. So those are the two. Thank you.
Without wanting to speak on behalf of the Cabinet, I know that Councillor Riley was hoping to come to one of these meetings to explain about, we had previously made a recommendation, which he was fully supportive of, when we were looking at the economic development. There was a temporary role within the council, which we felt had provided enormous benefit to small and medium-sized businesses, start-up businesses. And we had a report which was very detailed and was sort of glowing about what they had offered, but it was a temporary thing. And we had asked the Cabinet if they could look into whether they could make this a permanent position. And I believe that is something which Councillor Riley was come to speak to us about. He was due to come to our last meeting. I don't think he was available today, but I think that's perhaps looking towards Cabinet members here. That is still something. There we go. He's coming to the next meeting to talk about that very thing. So hopefully that will answer that question. It's not my job to speak on behalf of Cabinet, but I did happen to know that that was the case. Unless Rodney's got something further he wants to add in answer to Lana.
I think just on the first question about that cost, yes, there were extra costs incurred by the council, because obviously we had to write out to people to say, sorry, we didn't collect your direct debit, we will collect it again on this date. So actually, yes, there was a cost of those extra letters, and there was a cost because actually, rather than collecting the money in April, we collected it in May, so we had lost that interest on that money that would have been in our bank otherwise. As with regard to the economic support, I think we'll need to come back to that one, because I think we're steering off the topic about actually our performance indicators for how are they and how they're monitored. And actually this is more of a policy question about going forward, about how is this Cabinet going to help small and medium-sized enterprises. So I don't think it's something we can necessarily address today, but I'm sure there's Cabinet colleagues there who'll be listening to that conversation.
I presume that we'll find out somewhere, but could we be told how much that cost was to the council of this Christmas hiccup, please? Obviously not off the top of your head, probably, but just, you know, I think it would be nice to, well, I don't know if my colleagues would support that, for that to be fed back to this committee.
Jonathan.
Yeah, just a quick observation on an area that I'm sort of working on. It's the measure 9, the number of new jobs created in the district, is amber and is on its way down. And measure 10, the employment rate, is amber and on its way down. Quite concerned about those two figures, but I think we need to monitor these things, because obviously they could be going into the red. But I'm also concerned about measure 12, the percentage of vacant retail space in market towns. Now, that is green still, but it is on the way down. More concerned really, because I think we've just heard recently about the grid serve, where their retail hasn't proved to work. I'm just a bit concerned that we've got that measure to see what was going on in the market towns, but obviously the suburbs we've got of the areas just on the outskirts of Norwich, to see what is actually going on there as well is in my eyes just as important. As we see employment areas increase, I think, you know, knowing what's going on in Aylsham and Reetham is part of the story, but also knowing what's going on in those areas of development where we've got more people starting to live, and to see what's happening in those employment areas. Just to, like I say, just to notice that although that one is green, that is on the way down as well in the market towns. We obviously need them to stay, but we also need to focus on the fact that my big concern would be if Marks and Spencer's can't open up on this side of the city and make it work. I'm a bit concerned who could. And that was just my sort of observation on that we might need to monitor that more.
Unless there's something you particularly want to add to that, you're both looking at me as if like, nope. I think you said it, Jonathan, very clearly. Thank you. I do think there are other measures, of course, which we can look at in the future, or that could be looked at perhaps as, you know, as things change in what we need to be, you know, that the mix of Broadland is not just about market towns, there are some quite large villages which have thriving communities as well, that perhaps there can be measures done for that at some point in the future. One thing, just going back from my memory, 20 odd years ago when I was on Norfolk District Council, of course, we had a similar measure of employment rate, and it was dropping considerably. And of course, it was as Norfolk was turning increasingly into retirement land that we had a fall in employment, because just people were moving in. And I'd speak only as my in-laws have moved to Broadland from South Norfolk, and they are retirement age, and it could be, it's a lovely part of the world to move to in your golden years, and that may well account for some of that decline. I don't know, but that's just my memory of for some of the villages around North Norfolk changed very much to that sort of picture. Let's move on to the recommendations. I won't read them out to you, but they're stated very clearly there. All those in favour of the recommendations are stated.
And that's
Thank you, and thank you for your answers to our many questions. I think you're not on to the next one, are you? So I know that last time I think Rodney was here, he was here stuck in the chair for about half the meeting. Right, okay, so financial, Rodney's coming, yeah, sorry. Now we move on to next agenda item, financial report for quarter 4, and Darren's leading on this one.
Thank you, Chair. This is just a statement of factual finance information, really, for the end of the financial year up to the 31st of March 24. Just gives an overview of our whole annual position. I'm just going to highlight a few key points. So at the end of the financial year, we had an overall deficit on the cost of services of £63,000 against a budget of 13 million. That was offset considerably by higher investment income. We recorded £1.9 million pounds of investment income against an original budget of 1.1 million, and that's due to us having higher cash balances, and we benefited from higher interest rates, higher than we would have expected throughout the year. The overall position led us to transfer £451 million, £450,000. 451 million would have been nice, to the general fund at the end of the year. In the capital programme, we spent 14.5 million against a budget of 21.8 million. The appendices details those variances across service delivery area, broken down in more detail. And there are also 4 revenue budget carry forward requests and several capital budget carry forward requests to be considered that we would apply to budgets in 24-25. Any questions? Thank you.
In the absence of anyone putting their hand up, I was just going to say, is the variance in the investment income due to interest rates remaining higher than had been anticipated?
Yes, we budgeted for interest rates based on the advice that we'd have from our Treasury advisors, that they would be a lot lower than they were throughout the year. We'd expected the Bank of England to reduce those, but they either went up during the year or towards the end of the year they kind of peaked at 5.25%, but we'd anticipated them dropping to at least 4 or even lower percent. So that was included in our forecasts for the year before. Yeah.
I was hoping you were going to say there's some absolute wizardry gone on within your department that made that but that's great news all the same. I don't take that as a criticism. I thought you were going to say, oh no, we'll tell you in private what we did. But thank you. Has anybody else got anything they'd like to ask? No? Well, Jonathan.
Yeah, just quickly on the capital slippage requests, just looking down the list there, I can remember the car park improvements, the 100,000 for everything on that. That seems like rather a large sum for public conveniences. And is that just a standard amount? Because I know we have got some public convenience. Is that just sort of a standard amount that's put in for that? Or is that a special sort of one-off project? Because, like I say, I can remember the car park at 125, but that's 175, and I can't remember talking about toilet blocks.
I think there's significant work going to take place on Ramworth, which is 50k, but I think the team are going to kind of refurbish the other toilet blocks that we've got as well over the next year at least, and possibly the year after.
I think that is that budget for the refurbished works, but actually, as Darren said, there's only one that's actually committed to at the moment, and on the cabinet we'll be looking at the options for the other toilet blocks, and nothing is committed as such apart from the Ranworth toilets there at the moment.
Caroline.
So we're talking about toilets. Can we talk about changing place facilities? Have they been funded? We have some money from government for 2. Have they actually been actioned?
We had 2 changing places toilets, one at Blickling Hall and the other one at Raw, and we were pleased. Raw, sorry. You have, yeah, and so they've both been in action, both been working well, and really, really pleased, and we had some really positive feedback about both of them. So, should any additional money come out, then we would certainly look at some more, because actually it not only proved to be a really good project for individuals who need that, actually it brought us and the community together as well, and and Raw and Blickling Hall were really supportive. So yeah, very positive.
I started a campaign about 10 years ago for changing places from none in Norwich. Now we've got so many, it's brilliant. But we need more in Broadland.
Thank you. Mine was on the Broadland Growth Developments Fund, and obviously that's remained static again. I thought that we'd brought in a member of staff to look at projects and carry that forward, and I think that was about 18 months ago. So I'm quite surprised that it's still sat there. But also, again, at 3 million, it seems quite a low figure to actually be doing anything with. So again, what are the thoughts around utilising any of the outruns, the 450,000, to go back into the Broadland Growth rather than the general reserve?
So just on that Broadland Growth, there was 3 million in 23-24, but then there's a further 2 million for the current year. So in total, there's 5 million set aside for investment in Broadland Growth. The actual member staff isn't employed by itself; they're very much working for Broadland Growth. So the process will be Broadland Growth will come up with a scheme and then come to this council for us to decide whether or not to fund Broadland Growth. So there is that slight distinction between who's looking at developments and ourselves. I'm aware that they are actively looking at a couple of developments, but it is quite difficult, particularly to bring forward sort of housing schemes at the moment, with the challenges actually to get planning permission on any site. I can understand why they will be struggling to get a scheme up and running and ready to come for ourselves, but I do know they are actively looking at a couple of potential sites which will be coming back, hopefully, Broadland Growth with approach to council in due course.
Thank you. If nobody else has got any further questions, my head's still dealing with slippages in public conveniences from what Jonathan said, so my head got stuck on that for a while. Let's move to the recommendation to endorse the revenue and capital position for the year end and to approve the revenue and capital slippage request for use in 24-25. All those in favour? Thank you. Sorry, when you've been working in the school all day, your brain goes that way. It's sorry. Let's move to the annual Treasury Review report and Georgina. Oh, sorry, Ron.
So this is a statutory report we need to bring back each year to just report back on our Treasury management performance for the year just gone. I'm pleased to report it's quite a dull report with nothing exciting to really report. An interesting report would be when actually we've sort of haven't got the money back that we've invested or done something odd. And actually, I'm pleased to report there's been nothing like that. Actually, it's gone. We've kept our prudential indicators on track. A couple of points I'd just like to highlight. End of March, we had 42.6 million invested. So that gives you a size of the scale of the amount we're investing. And these are very much with the standard banks and money market funds and things like that. And that's previously mentioned in the report that Darren presented. For the previous year, we did achieve £1.9 million return on that investment, which obviously helps contribute to the overall financial health of the authority. But apart from that, there's nothing else to report, and open for questions.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything they'd like to ask? No, seems very straightforward. Okay, we'll move that we go to the recommendations. All those in favour of the recommendations? Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the whole finance team. Thank you. We move to the housing allocations policy review. Richard will be leading on this, and he will be then going straight because there is an amendment, or sorry, a change, additional recommendation, which has already spoken to me about. And rather than coming via me to the chair, he will, when he's got to that bit, pass straight over to Councillor Hartley, Natasha, to talk about the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair. So, tiny bit of background. As you're all aware, the allocations policy is a key policy in deciding who can be allocated a social house within the district. Unfortunately, as you also are aware, and as you've seen in the previous reports, the demand on housing continues to go up and up. In 2020, our housing register was around 500. Now, unfortunately, I'm sad to report, as of today, it's 1,133 people waiting for a social house. And that's, just in case you were wondering, that is Broadland alone. So South Norfolk is on top of that, so any figures. So throughout the allocation policy, to get to this point, we've completed a significant amount of member engagement. This included 3 BDC member workshops and then 1 joint one, just to make sure, so we can compare notes and see what outcomes we were coming to, and we can learn from each other as well. Within each workshop, suggestions were made on what things we could change, and then we obtained an external company to come in and then test what those impact on those changes would have on our residents. So if we, for example, put local connection up far higher, how many people would that impact? What would it have an impact on our housing register? In the following meeting, we were able to look at those impacts and then be able to draw back or grow further and then test those even further. So we were really able to test the recommendations in which we put in front of you today. Consultation was then completed. We received mostly positive feedback from our consultation, which is quite, it says a lot about where social housing is at the moment, because we have gone harder on many of these things because of the demand on social housing, and yet there was really strong support for many of the changes that we had. 143 people across both consultations, the Broadland one and then the joint one, came across to us. 92% were in favour for downsizing, for example. However, not so favourable feedback regarding the removal of the family connection, and that was 60, but it was still 67% supported to make that amendment. So the recommendation to go from ONS to Council is to recommend the changes as detailed within the report to Cabinet and then Cabinet onto Council. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. So, as you heard, the findings did go out to public consultation and they were generally quite well received, but the one with the lowest approval was the removal of the family connection. So we have considered that and looked at how we can try and make things a bit better for people, and what we've decided to do is to maintain the family connection, but for people who are 55 and over and need support. So it's not going to be a blanket, you have someone living in Broadland, you can claim that family connection. You have to be 55 or over and have a support need in order to use that. And we feel that is a fair compromise
to maintain support for those who are most vulnerable, but without overwhelming the system. Thank you.
Yeah, questions? Caroline?
What about families who have disabled children? What about the age? You've got 55 and over, but there are some families who have disabled children who might need to be in the area.
It's a really good point. So the reason I've chosen, we've looked at recommending 55 and above, is there's two ways in which you can look at caring for someone of that age group. Either they come to you or they go to them. The problem we're seeing more and more within this case is more and more families want to move to the elderly relative, and that's why we've recommended over to 55. To meet your point regarding the younger children, there's two ways in which you can access social housing. The one that we're looking at today is our I can't think of the word, discretionary side of how we access social housing. There's also statute and there's homeless legislation as well. So if someone had a significant change in circumstances and they required to move closer to their family, and because their house was no longer suitable, they would be homeless. And then when they would present to their council, their council then would look at the support needs in which they have, and they would do a Section 198 referral to us. We would then pick them up as homeless. They would still be able to gain access to social housing through the homelessness route if their property was not of suitable for them any longer. Okay? If someone was, however, in their district and their property could be adapted and they could gain the support that they needed through there, then they wouldn't be able to go through the homeless route. So the point I'm making is there's multiple routes to social housing. What we don't want to do is allow a discretionary floodgates as well, because that's what we've been experiencing recently, which means that we're not able to help the people within our district who need access to those houses as much as the others coming out. Okay.
So the point I make, we need more housing which is adaptable in this country. I had one family in Drayton and one family in Taverham who found it very difficult to get a suitable house for their child in a wheelchair. And if you've got a child like that, you do need the support of your family around you, your extended family. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I'd love to just sit here and just say we just need more houses. I mean, that's the key point that we're seeing. But the point in which you're making there is very key. We've got residents who need those disabled adapted properties within our area. We have a much homegrown need. So what I'm equally trying to do is protect those homegrown needs to be able to gain access to the houses within our district, rather than them being equal in competition with someone else who may have a family member who have just lived here. Okay, so unfortunately with a diminished supply of properties, we need to make sure that we are looking after your constituents primarily as well.
And the point is though about looking at our housing need for the future, and that's something that certainly we'll be picking up.
Fran, then I'll ask Lana.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks very much for this document. There was a couple of things I wanted to clarify. Well, I'll start with the additional information we've been given here. It says further clarity to be added within core policy following 6.4.3. It says here the family member must be responsible for the unpaid care of the applicant. Well, some people get carer's allowance. Does that count? Attendance allowance, does that count? They don't count. Do we need to be absolutely clear about that then? Because I'm just saying that on this basis, they're being paid, but they're not really being paid. You know, not as a carer. So that was my first point, really. I also wanted to ask about Band D. I must say, I don't know how many people are in Band D now, but the likelihood of people in Band D ever being offered the property is almost near zero. Would that be true? You can answer them, and then I'll come back with the last point. Yeah, thank you.
Shall I answer the first two questions? So I'm really thankful for that feedback, because it's a really good point. I don't want it to be... So the point we were trying to make why we added those wording is we don't want someone who is getting a full care network from Norfolk County Council, for example, and then they add a slight complementary part of it. This is about those people who fundamentally could not exist with their family members providing their core care. Okay, so really good point. We can add that onto the clarity. So thank you for that. Regarding Band D, yes and no, as always is the case with housing. So if you're on there and you haven't got any local Section 106 properties being built near you, your chances are very, very, very low. Okay, you may occasionally we still get them when it's a really hard to let property, but it's really important we have Band D there, because when there is local housing being built in your local area, we need to make sure we have a pool of people who are there ready. So when local residents say, why should I have a load of houses built in my area, you at least can sit there as members and say, don't worry, these will be for your children, because they will be for their children because they're under Section 106. And Section 106, for those who do not know, does everyone know Section 106? I won't bother clearing it then. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. It was actually Section 106, my next question. So maybe I should have asked that first of all. But it was actually, in 7.8.4 here on page 136, you talk about the Section 106 for local connection. We've had this discussion before about how in Broadland we have, it's basically 1/3 on first let, isn't it, to local families, okay? But it's only on first let. We do refer in this one of the paragraphs here around, basically both on first occupation and in perpetuity those who have a local community need for an affordable dwelling. But we have talked about whether or not we should introduce for Broadland that it is in perpetuity for local people. No, I think we should. I absolutely feel there should be an amendment here or clarity here that the Section 106 is not just on the first let for local people, that should be in perpetuity. So for me, I think if that's a suggestion within this paragraph, it's not. So if we can clarify that, I would absolutely might be over the moon. But if not, I'd like to make an amendment that we do that. Thank you.
I would love to as well. I can't change the planning regulations in which those properties are being built through the allocations policy. However, I want to reassure you this is something that's on our forward plan. It's on, and we've penciled it in for 2025 to be able to review, because we need to work with planning in this area to make sure that future planning permissions are done so with the Section 106 cascade, which works for us as a service. Okay.
So there will be a report. I think it's, I mean, I won't do it now, but I'll let you know when that report's due on.
We are a local planning authority, aren't we? So, talking about joined up thinking and working, surely this is not beyond the means of us to do that now. Yeah, but we've been having this conversation for over 2 years, so I don't see why we can't do it now. That's my point, Chairman. Thank you.
Long.
Sorry, just trying to digest the answers Fran got. Now, if I can be of some assistance, when it came to building a lot of the housing where the local allocation was only given to the first let, yes, a lot of that was written into the 106 agreements. However, it was also in many cases it was underpinned by funding by Homes England, so who, particularly in the case of shared ownership housing, were absolutely insistent that no local allocation policy was allowed to be administered on that housing. So I think if we can, personally, just because I do know the planning system quite well, I think if we could work towards having that in perpetuity for Broadland residents moving forward, I think that would be a step in the right direction, because that would, align us with South Norfolk as well. My question is, I'm slightly confused. I know that there's a really good intention sitting behind that, but we are extending the people who are aged 55 or over with care needs, they will be allowed to request an affordable home in the district. I think what I would like to know is this, does this apply exclusively for specific specialised housing with care need complexes like Swallowtail in Acol, and I think there's one in Aylshire. Anyway, they're all over the place where that care is within where they live, or do they simply have to already have a care need to be then given a house? What I'm concerned about is, and Fran, you'll know this as well, is that care, especially in the east of the county, is it's a bit patchy, especially for the elderly, and can be. And those holes are plugged by, various agencies, etc., as best they can. I'm just concerned that if we open that gate, with the best of intentions, that we're perhaps building additional issues into the system, unless we say, yes, that, we are welcoming people who, have those needs. However, within, it would probably be more sensible to say that it would be for those housing complexes like, Swallowtail Place, etc. I just wonder if that was a consideration at any point.
Thank you. So just to be clear, at present in our allocations policy, it reads, have a family member, parent, adult child or adult sibling who lives or has lived in Broadland for a continuous period of at least 5 years. So that means at present, if you've got a granny or a parent has lived here, you then are afforded, who has lived here for 5 years, residents from other districts are afforded a local connection to our area. So we're not looking, by adding this amendment in, by making it any, we're reducing the generosity significantly. We're just stopping at the over 55s. That's all we're doing, okay? Regarding to the housing with care, we take a very generous approach regarding housing with care anyway, because they often face voids. And we work very hard with adult social services to make sure as quickly as possible for them to, when a need is identified, a void is identified within one of the properties, such as Swallowtail, to make sure that that person can be put in there as quickly as possible. Okay? They are, of course, prioritised for Broadland and your Broadland residents, but it gets to the point often where we have to make it wider, and to have an empty housing with care placement is far worse, especially how much they cost, than having than this. But housing with care units are not a problem in respect to over subscription. It's more the social housing stock that is.
Yes, which brings me, sorry Chairman, I didn't mean to, which brings me back to the point that perhaps if we keep that window open for that particular age brackets, that we perhaps say that the housing with care schemes are perhaps a better place, rather than adding additional stress onto our housing stock, our existing housing stock. That, I think that would be fair, because not only is then the care more easily and more affordably provided, it then relieves pressure on other parts of housing which could be suitable for young families, or perhaps women fleeing domestic violence with small children, etc., etc. So that's my only suggestion, that there are places that are custom built, purpose built for this particular demographic, that perhaps we should funnel that need into those places. Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry to come. So housing with care is, you have to have a very high care need.
Not necessarily.
Because you often have to have that recommendation from adult social services. The people we're trying to assist, those people who, with family support, will not move towards a costly, urgent situation. And by keeping this avenue open as an option, that allows them to move closer to family and hopefully avoid going into a potentially housing with care until they absolutely need it, making sure that those housing with care placements are freely available for those who do. So that's the only is crossing that there's a big window of opportunity to get in there with a family support to provide the support to make sure that they live a happy long life with a family living nearby.
It's my last bite of the cherry. I remain unconvinced because when you move somebody, I've just moved my mother-in-law with dementia. It's just thinking that it doesn't stop. It's just that you don't avoid that gap terribly quickly. But what you do end up doing is spending a shed load of money on adaptations. You spend a shed load of money on all sorts of other things that go around that that wrap around that. And I am going to contest your assertion that you need a big care package. On a Swallowtail Place, you can get away with as little as 1 hour a week. That was my last information. So, but I'll say no more, Chairman. I've had.
Probably have to agree to politely differ. Caroline.
Can I just say, I think Lana's got a bit of a strange idea there. Not everybody who needs family care needs to be in a care facility. I have a disabled grandson. He needs family care, but he does not need to be in a facility for care.
Sorry, it's not my ideas that are strange and misunderstood.
The disabled facilities grant is fantastic in Broadland, and I must say I've made use of it for him. So I applaud that. Thank you.
I think one thing that has come across is the sense that a lot of members feel that there should be more of a focus on what we are providing for people within Broadland, and I think personally I welcome the perhaps narrowing of that or filtering out that we seem to be encouraging by having this, which is at the moment anyone can just say, oh yes, my uncle lives in Broadland, I'm going to apply to Broadland. I guess I'm currently living in Fleetwood in Lancashire, but I can't wait to move to Broadland. And it seems to be that that's what is in place at the moment, and we're sort of trying to find that local link and foster that sense that we'd like people who live locally to be able to remain locally to us as they grow up. So if you're saying, Mike, that there's a policy, something they're working towards, the council's working towards at the moment, which Fran explains we've been waiting for a long while. Perhaps that might be something which Natasha could at some point sort of give some feedback to us all on, and Mike, about where we're at with that, because that seems like it's something which we're all quite behind and feeling that needs to happen as soon as possible. Then we can work as the council, that wraparound of everything the council does can all work in that direction. I think that's really important for my personal view, but I see there's a few nods on that. I think if we've not got anything else to add, Natasha.
Just to chip in very quickly, I want to thank Caroline for making your point about people with disabilities. There is this idea that people who are disabled are helpless, and they don't all need sheltered accommodation or specialist accommodation. There are other means to support them, such as the Disabled Facilities Grant, of which I have authorised some adaptations which exceed the normal spend to make sure people are in their homes. So I think I just want to thank you for making that point. It's a very good one. Thank you.
If we could, I think, move to the recommendations and the additional recommendations, we'll take as one, if everyone's happy with that. All those in favour?
And that's carried, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen. I don't know why I turn my microphone off. Every time I say that, and I turn it off, and I think, what have I done that for? I'm going to carry on speaking. We're now moving to the productivity plan, and that's Sinead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So The purpose of this report is to provide you with an overview of the productivity plan, and it will be seeking Cabinet's approval for its publication. So just a bit of background. So government requested that all local authorities produce a productivity plan, and this was announced as part of the recent local government finance settlement, and we were given a deadline of the 19th of July to submit this to government. Obviously, with the general election last week, we are now awaiting a steer from government on what the next steps will be on this. But until we hear otherwise, we are continuing progressing this plan. So you'll see in the report that government have requested the plan covers 4 key themes, and I've outlined those in section 2.2, and they've also requested that this plan is published on our website. They've stated that the plan will be used to consider the emerging themes across the sector, so looking at implications in terms of future policy, design, and the role of government in supporting further change in local government. Appendix 1 therefore sets out our proposed plan, and the plan mirrors our current policy framework, so that being our strategic plan and delivery plan, which were approved by Council in February this year. It doesn't introduce any new pieces of work. It is purely just a summation of the work that we have done to date and the next steps in the area of productivity and transformation. So just in terms of the recommendations, so we're seeking for Cabinet's approval to the draft plan, and then the delegation to the Chief of Staff in consultation with the leader to submit that plan, depending on the outcomes of what comes out of government in the next couple of weeks. Thank you. I'll pause there for questions.
Yeah, I think it is, obviously it was something that was asked for by a department that's now completely changed, and obviously there were announcements today. If they do use this information, obviously we've got that where we've worked on the information before, so yeah, if they do use it to work anything out, I think it will be a benefit, but if they decide that that's not the way they want to go, then obviously it is a bit of a, you know, it'll just go and sit in some office in London, it'll just sit there. So yeah, I think we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Lana.
Can I just suggest that, you know, if government don't want this anymore, quite possible, that we kind of keep it as an internal measure, because you know, good productivity just reflects that there's a happy team on board. So I suggest that we could use this as an internal measure.
I agree to some extent. Anything which shows where you're making savings and cutting out waste is beneficial. So I welcome the report. I guess it's a question of how much duplication and how much effort has been put in producing a report on how much money we're saving, if you know what I mean. Because sometimes it's like, have we got a department that's created to deal with how we produce the report? So I guess that's one. You know, there's a silver lining to every cloud, I guess. Do we have anyone else that'd like to say something? I'd suggest we thank Sinead for the report and accept the recommendations. All those in favour?
And that's carried, Chairman.
Thank you. And Sinead again, Public Sector Equality Duty Annual Update and Equality Objectives. It's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it?
Thank you, Chair. So you'll see this report has 2 key elements to it. So the first is to outline the progress made by the Council during 23-24 in complying with our public sector equalities duty, and the second is to update the equality objectives for the Council. So just a bit of background. So we're required by the Equalities Act of 2010 to publish an annual report outlining how we have complied with the equalities duties, and this is outlined in section 2.1. But essentially, as a public body, we have to consider how we promote equalities when we make decisions, when we set new policies or strategies, when we procure goods or services, when we deliver the services we provide, or when we recruit and manage our employees. So Appendix 1 provides an annual report for 23-24, and this outlines the activities and the work we've undertaken to meet the requirements of the public sector equalities duty. You'll see much of the work in that appendix is embedded into the way we operate. As a public body, we're also bound by what's called specific duties, and this means we need to publish 1 or more equality objectives every 4 years, and we're now due to update those objectives, and you'll see that they are set out in Appendix 2, and they cover the period of 24 to 28 to align to the strategic, to our council plan timelines. The objectives reflect the new vision and aims of the council, and it also now includes lead officers and timelines, and this is really to ensure we have greater oversight and accountability with delivery of those objectives in the coming years. Finally, onto the recommendations. So we're seeking Cabinet's approval to the objectives and for them to note the annual report, which after that Cabinet meeting will be published on our website. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything they'd like to ask? Lana.
Can I just ask, I haven't seen an Intrans logo on our papers for a while. Is that been addressed in some other way, the translation service?
No, we are still with Intran. I can take a look at some of our templates and letters if that's helpful, but we still do use Intran for our translation interpretation services.
Sue.
Thanks, Chair. Just on page 3 of the actual document, I'm just querying under bullet point disability under our district. It says 6.4% of residents were identified as being disabled and limited a lot. And that's all it says. Is there something missing there?
I do apologise, that looks like a typo and I will look at that.
Right. Mark.
I know we've already voted and done on previous point, but I would say that the census is actually going towards answering some of the questions of earlier, which is number of people aged 65 to 74 rose by 20%, and the number of the kind of higher bracket working age has dropped by 12%. So it suggests that the working age are moving out and the retirees are moving in.
Well spotted. Yeah, it does seem to be there's that trend. Fran.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to say I'm very pleased to see this section here about the Help Hub and all the work that they're doing. I know the van come through the Health and Wellbeing Partnership, and obviously that's going out to communities, as I know, and clearly making a difference, as the community connectors are too. So I was really pleased about that. I just wanted to ask, obviously this is a document about equality, all right, and on page 230 there's a graphic here which has got a lot about pride. It's got International Women's Day, it's got World Mental Health. There's no reference to men really. I mean, not directly. You could argue there is within pride, you could argue there is within mental health, but I just thought if we're talking about equality, it might be useful to actually encompass, you know, both sexes perhaps. Well, it doesn't say men's mental health, does it? Huh? Sorry?
Men's Mental Health Month was the same month that Pride Month now is.
Right, okay. But this graphic doesn't say it. So it was just a point. I just thought if we're talking about equality, perhaps we should reflect that. Thank you.
So we are looking at our equalities events in terms of, as you can imagine, there are a lot of different equalities events throughout the year, and we have to decide each year which ones we want to focus on in particular. But I will take that way, and we work closely with the comms and marketing team to look at those in terms of publication.
Sorry, Chairman. If I may just one of the things around the Health and Wellbeing Partnership as well is we are specifically looking around men and men's mental health, and particularly around men between 25 and 45 who work particularly in construction and agriculture, but not exclusively. But they are some of the biggest suicide risks in Broadland. So that is an area, actually, it's an interest. I know the comment was made in good faith, but in general, it is an area that we do need to look at, and it is sometimes, particularly around working men or men in areas where in jobs where they work on their own a lot, suicide is quite a risk. So that is an area we will be looking at.
Peter.
Hi. I've got a good memory, and I can remember the old days when I used to be at work with BT, and they were very keen on having equalities and diversity training. do we have, or could we not have, some sort of policy where I'm sure staff are trained with their equalities training and diversity awareness, perhaps to extend it so that councillors get it as well, because to a lot of people it might be quite eye-opening to see just, you know, the discrimination that some people are affected by. They may not be, it might be unwillfully, but you know, they might be a little bit ignorant to these kinds of things.
We do still provide equalities training to members, so you should have received that on Skillsgate.
Page 231, actions, reference 1, conduct accessibility review of the offices and existing facilities on a regular basis. I am still really peeved. When we moved into this building, we did not put a changing place facility in here. And I just want to make that comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the comment, although I'm happy to be corrected if I've got this wrong, that the percentages are great. Obviously, they're from the 2021 census, so they're already 3 years out of date, and also they don't include any under 16s, under 18s. So actually, we need to be mindful that probably those percentages are actually high if we look at the population as a whole. And if we're doing mental health work, it would also be quite useful to look at our young people, because mental health in teenagers is also, or mental health issues with teenagers is skyrocketing, and there's very little actually in the district to support them. So, thank you.
And as well as men's mental health, one thing we have picked up on is youth mental health as well. 11 to 18 is a particular barrier, but what we increasingly find is 18 to 25, that transition from full-time education, and we're seeing loneliness and isolation amongst young people is quite prevalent at the moment, and so yeah, looking at how we support that, which is it's a much more, in some ways, difficult target group, because as they get to 18 they become more dispersed, you know, and how do we support that, and that kind of, that area when you don't like to ask for help, and you know, men have that same problem, but you know, how we support that, but that's certainly on our radar as well, Chairman.
Thank you. All good points being raised. Anybody? Oh, Natasha.
Sorry, just to add, you know, I welcome the inclusion of all groups into this field. Obviously, if it's equalities, it includes everybody, but we do have to be careful that we don't just say, you know, we look at one group and then it's the whataboutery, or what about this group? Not every group has an opposite and an equal. Men as a collective aren't regarded as a high risk group. It'll be men's mental health specifically, and if anyone is curious about my feelings on that, in addition to the stuff that Mike has already mentioned, at the start of the year I did have a meeting with the comms team and highlighted some areas that I wanted us to be focusing on, and that did include men's mental health, specifically Movember. So I look forward to seeing you all growing your beards and moustaches in November for men's mental health. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any further questions or comments on Let's Make? Right, well then we'll move to the recommendations to note the public sector duty annual report and to approve the equality objectives for 24 to 28 as attached in Appendix B. All those in favour?
And that's carried, Chairman.
And with no further business, I close this meeting. Thank you very much, everybody, for your contributions tonight.